everyone, and welcome back to what I would consider to be one of the very special The Doctor Will See You Now. And I'm sure that by the end of our time together in this consultation, you will most definitely agree. It is an utmost pleasure to welcome into the surgery Mary Hannah. Mary, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, and all the better for seeing you.
The feeling is most mutual. Let me introduce you a little bit more here. Give the viewers a little bit more detail about, and then they can probably understand why I'm so excited about our time together. Multi-award winning, critically acclaimed Mary Hannah is the author of the DCI Kate Daniels series that we're finally able to have a wee bit more chat about. But not only that, the Stone and Oliver crime series and the Ryan and O'Neill series. So again, if there's anybody who's watching who is not familiar with Mari's work, honestly, you have a treasure trove of criminal delight to dive into. By way of a little bit more information, come back with me about 10 years. And July 2010, and Mary wins a Northern Writers Award for Settled Blood. 3 years later, she wins the Polari First Book Prize for her debut, The Murder Wall, and that's where you get introduced to Kate Daniels. She was awarded the CWA Dagger in the Library in 2017 as the author of the most enjoyed collection of work in libraries. And so, that far-reaching scope of Mari's work. 2019, she was awarded Diva Wordsmith of the Year. And in that same year, what a year that was, Mari was programming chair of the illustrious, the one and only Theakston Old Peculiar Crime Festival. Mari, 10 years of utter amazement. How does it feel when you hear about all that you've achieved?
It's really strange because I never really think about it like that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, these things come and they are absolutely amazing. I still have to pinch myself, to be honest, when I see those things and people say, "Oh, you've won 5 major awards and you've won da 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 and you've done this," and also reader in residence for Theakston's for 4 years, which was unbelievable and fantastic. I was really honoured to do that job because it was taking books to libraries, encouraging people to read, not my books, but other people's books, titles that had been chosen by the festival to share with readers. And the whole idea about the big read that we used to have every year was to take a title, go out to libraries. They would all have read the book. Some of them will have read, most of them will have read the book. And then to have a big conversation about the book, which was a delight. It was like having my own little book club, It was
Brilliant.
It was great. And that was, I went to libraries across the north, across Teesside and Tyneside and Yorkshire. And I met some fabulous people and had a lot of fun.
I think, again, the importance of engaging people in reading and sharing that passion that you have for writing and for reading and enabling people, to get into books that, yes, they might have read, but for the people, books they might not have read yet. So important.
It is, and I mean, for somebody who didn't have a lot of books, when I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of books because my father was in the army and we were always up and off every couple of years. We used to go, to another home, and I remember these huge, big packing cases I mean, they were huge, great big boxes, and we would all have to, put our stuff there, and my mum would pack it all up. But there was sadly not a lot of room for books. They were seen as a luxury. I'm not saying we didn't have any books, but we didn't have many books. And, you know, and I suppose, you know, it was difficult. It was difficult for me because every couple of years I was changing school. That really messes up your education. But it makes you in a different way. It helps you to make friends quickly, to be friendly, to not be frightened to meet new people. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts, really.
Yeah, definitely. But
And when I started off, you know, Jackie, I only was going to write the one book.
no way.
I was going to write one book. And then I got the bug, and I carried on once I'd written the one book, and I was getting lots of rejections. And I know there's a lot of new writers that watch this program.
Definitely.
And, you know, to be honest, you know, you get the rejection. And in my day, it used to, you had a great big manuscript, this thick, that would like come through your door and whop on the floor. So you knew it was a rejection before you even went to the door. Not nowadays, it's a ping on the email, that was it. But yes, it coming time and time again. But the first award that I won, the Northern Writers Award that I won, was a second try for a second book. So when I won that, and honestly, I was not going to send my thing in because I was at that stage where, having been rejected, I was kind of a bit not worried but embarrassed about showing my work to anyone else. And I remember there was 5 days to go, and I was writing away, and Mo came upstairs and did you do that application yet for Northern Writers Award? And I said, no. And she said, you should. You've got to do it now. Just stop what you're doing and do it now. And honestly, it was such a rush to get my first 3 chapters and a synopsis ready to send in. But I did. And when I won that, I just thought, do you know, that's a gatekeeper there. I'm going to keep going. And I had written 3 books before I got a deal for my first one. So, which is why the Northern Writers Award came first, 3 years before the first book prize, the Polari first book prize. So it was a odd way around, if you like.
But what I love, Mary, you know, as you say, you know, people who are thinking about writing and people who have started writing often tune in, and I'm always thrilled that established authors are willing to share those initial, you know, forays into being an author, things that work, things that don't work, how it doesn't necessarily follow, you know, the way that things should go. And yet,
I think every writer will tell you, if they're honest, that there have been times in their career when they've gone, oh, I'm wasting my time, I may as well give this up. That loads of times my head went down and I thought, I'm never going to make it. But I just kept going. And it is that thing where you just have to keep your bum on the seat, keep writing, keep believing, keep editing. And if you leave your manuscript alone, don't touch it for, you know, a couple of months. Go back. If you start editing, you know that is not ready to send out. And I think I was as guilty as anyone about sending material out to editors and agents who, when it wasn't quite ready. You know, so yeah, until you can't make it any better, until it's the best you can possibly do. And I think most people think it is the best they can do, but if they give themselves that little tiny space, just to say, right, okay, I'm going to write something else and I'm going to pick it up. And if they go, that bit's not quite working, but they won't notice. It'll be okay. They will notice. They will notice. If you've noticed, they will notice. So it's one of those things that I think that most writers like to give new writers coming up behind. You know, we're looking over our shoulders, all of us, to see those wonderful new debut authors that are coming up behind, and there always are, and they're material is at such high quality.
But
I mean,
I love the advice that you give, Mary. It's, because I'm sure there will be at least one person who watches and that will take them on.
I hope
But
so.
but something so long awaited, and so wonderful to be able to celebrate with you the launch of this paperback of Without a Trace. Kate Daniels is back, and I know around the globe there will be, hurrah, so lovely to be able to read those pages, to see her there again. This is book 7, and she's back with DS Hank Gormley, which is just, it's like putting on, if this weren't such a thriller, right, it would be like putting on a really comfortable pair of slippers and just thinking, they're back. But of course, Mary, you don't give us comfort at all. You give us a bit of a roller coaster, and we'll come to that. But what I'd love to know is, for you, the writer, how did it feel to come back to Kate? And was Without a Trace, was that already there? Or did that story emerge when you were able to return to Kate?
Well, the answer to that question is I think the first 6 books in this series were building up to this moment.
Wow.
Unfortunately, and that has gone all the way through the books until book 6, and I left my readers on a cliffhanger at the end of book 6, as you well know. For those that haven't read those books, that was where I was at. On the very last line of book 6, there's a massive cliffhanger, and at the time that I wrote it, I had no idea that I wouldn't be writing a new Kate very soon after. But what happened was I changed publisher. They wanted me to write something else. I fully and agreed with that. It was great because I got to start the Stone and Oliver series, which I love writing, and that has a couple of really, and they're a duo, David Stone and Frankie Oliver, and then I said, after 3 books, I said to my editor, or to my agent, first of all, I want to write Kate now. Readers are screaming for it. I'm ready to write it. The series is in development for TV. They will expect more titles. I need to resolve this cliffhanger because everybody's going, please, please, do tell us. So because of the cliffhanger at the end of book 6, this book was always going to be the book that it is. And, it's, I will read some of it to you in a moment, because actually, I drop Kate into this investigation on the very first page. She's literally hours after the end of book 6, that last line, which happens when she's standing in a hospital. Her dad's just had a major operation, and she gets a line from Hank that sends her off on a spin. And literally, 9 hours later, she's standing trying to blag her way into an investigation. She has no she has no business to be there, which will all come, you will understand what I'm trying to say when I read the first chapter for you.
Wonderful. I thank you for agreeing to do that. That really is. See, I told you viewers the treat that you were in for. Before we get that lovely reading, and especially for people who aren't familiar with the series, I'd just like for you, if you could tell us, Kate Daniels, over the years, where has she brought you to, Mary? What is that link between you and her? Where do you feel you are with this investigator?
Oh, do you know, I just feel like she's my best mate. She annoys me like I'm sure she annoys the readers. She can be an arsey person, if I'm allowed to say that. I'm allowed
You
to
are.
say that.
You are.
Good.
Yes.
But she's damn good at her job. You know, she's the kind of investigator that I happen to be in a civil partnership with. She's based, you know, partly on Mo. She used to, you know, be involved in a murder investigation team. She got on very well with that team and they adored her, even when she had to give them unpalatable news or what have you, which is what happens in a police environment. But they all loved and respected her. And I always wanted to write about a team led by a female who had that kind of relationship, and it wasn't all just, you know, a senior officer barking at her. Now her boss, Bright, took her under his wing from a very young age in the police force. He taught her everything she knows. She tests his patience over and over and over again, particularly in this book. But he would walk over hot coals for her and vice versa. And I think there's a, you know, she really does respect him, even when she's telling him she's not going to do what he's telling her to do, which she does in this book very often. He tells her to. She's in London, as I said. She's trying to blag her way into an investigation that is nothing to do with her professionally. Personally, a different matter. But he basically says, you get your ass back here to Newcastle. This is where you work. This is where you are. And she's basically prepared, even though throughout those first 6 books, she has always put her job before anything else, which is kind of why she has an on-off relationship with her, the love of her life. She doesn't always put her first. And then suddenly she's prepared to throw the whole thing away. But you'll find out when I read the first chapter, you'll find out why. So,
I just, even in what you're telling us now, I love what appears to be some kind of change in this woman. You know, where previously it was like it was the job. First and foremost, it's a job, but there seems to be some kind of shift here. And that intrigues me. You know, why
good.
Yeah.
It's supposed to intrigue you.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
I think it's, you know, this book asks a lot of questions. And one of the questions I think that it asks is how far you would go to find a missing loved one. You know, what matters, you know, and, you know, you and I have spoken about this, about, you know, how circumstances, particularly this year, for example, might lead you to an epiphany. You know, I don't want to do this anymore for a living, or I don't want to stay with this partner, or my kids are more important than I thought they were. Everybody's kids are important, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's made us all stop and think. And I think in one way, the situation that Kate finds herself in is just that kind of moment, that kind of, you know, kind of what is more important to me, even though it could be too late for her. I hope that's not too cryptic.
Oh, it's lovely. I
Don't
love
cry.
it.
Don't cry, Jackie. If you do, I will.
No, yeah, no tears at this. Now, so I think that is an absolutely wondrous moment for us to settle back. And if you do us the honours, Mari, take us into Without a Trace.
It's like Listen with Mother, isn't it?
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Right. Autumn 2014. Kate needed to be calm, but was struggling to process the scene facing her. In a major incident suite unfamiliar to her, the names of passengers and crew of a missing transatlantic aircraft were being uploaded in real time onto an enormous electronic screen, the plane disappearing from the radar around 150 nautical miles short of New York's JFK. Having driven through the night at breakneck speed, almost 300 miles from her Northumbria base, she was in no fit state to take it in. Dripping wet in the doorway of the Metropolitan Police Casualty Bureau Aviation Security Command, Kate was counting down the seconds until it was time to sell a pack of lies that would give her access to an investigation that was well outside of her jurisdiction. DS Hank Gormley glanced sideways. His SIO's face was ashen as she took in the mayhem, physical and audible. Phone lines were hot, personnel jammed into every available space, traumatised by their task. On the journey south, he'd been constantly on the phone, checking the net for updates, consulting press colleagues, an information-gathering exercise he fed to Kate as the miles flew by. The missing flight was breaking news. Predetermined emergency telephone numbers had gone live on TV and radio within 15 minutes of notification that a plane had been lost. A designated contact centre had been set up, manned round the clock by trained call handlers from Met Police and other forces, all this replicated in New York. Kate checked her watch, almost 10 a.m. 9 hours earlier, when Hank told her that Joe Soulsby's flight was missing, the glass she was holding fell from her hand, shattering as it hit the deck. Symbolic. Kate was in bits, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. She stumbled into his arms, the only prop she could cling on to. With her father's coronary and life-threatening emergency surgery a matter of hours old, she'd half expected a death today, if that was what this was. But not Joe. Never Joe. Joe was vibrant and full of life, a skilled professional and loving mum, a survivor. Maybe she hadn't travelled after all. Maybe it was all a mistake. Hank remained silent. Kate hadn't cried, not when he'd shared the news, nor on the drive south. She was too numb. He knew her well enough to see beyond her professional persona. She was deeply distressed, trying to keep a lid on it for his sake. Joe was more than a colleague to both of them. Kate was in denial, unable or unwilling to accept that she was missing. There was a deep affection between the three, a camaraderie that was hard to come by, even by MIT standards. Hank couldn't reject the notion that Joe might have changed her plans. Detectives didn't write people off on the balance of probabilities. He'd attended enough accidents to know that people who were deemed to be aboard a bus, a train, or travelling in a car were sometimes not among the casualties. That improbable hope died in his head, but stayed alive in his heart. What was taking so long? 15 minutes ago, Kate had asked to speak to the Gold Commander. He hadn't appeared. On the other side of the room, two men were deep in conversation, one of them making his mouth go, an arrogant stance. He glanced her way, deeply suspicious of the stranger who'd blagged her way into the Casualty Bureau in no hurry to hook her up with the man she'd come to see. Locking eyes with him, Kate held her bottle, the enormity of what she was about to do feeling like a heavy weight in her chest. In her head, she replayed Hank's attempt to comfort her in that grim hospital corridor back home. She'd never forget the panic that flashed across his face. Hank was in shock too, battling hard to keep his composure so that she could fall apart. She was damned if she would. Hank eyed the Met detectives. The cocky bastards turned their backs, making the Northumbria officers wait. If they took any longer, Kate would lose her cool. He wouldn't put it past her to march over there and intervene, and it wouldn't be pretty. She looked smaller somehow. Grief did that to people. She appeared to have her shit together, but you never knew in situations like these. Had he been able to summon words of support, they would have been woefully inadequate. She was on leave, with no authority to pull this off, and no hope in hell of doing so. She needed her mettle now. He could only hope that she knew what she was doing and why she was doing it. It hit Kate then, the enormity of a situation she wouldn't have thought possible a few hours ago, settling in her gut. She focused on the man approaching, a detective with a confident presence, an arrogant swagger. He was late 40s, tall, fit, unfriendly eyes. A brave face was required. The cause of the lost flight, deliberate or accidental, would be determined by others in due course. So traumatized was she by either scenario, she didn't answer when Hank asked her what her plans were. She didn't look at him either, though she expected his condemnation for going off book. Kate had one focus. She had to find out for sure if Joe was on that flight. I'm not going to go any further. So that's where we're at. So we know what the story is now. We're looking for somebody. We're looking to see whether they were on board that flight. And obviously there were over 300 other people on that flight. And as the investigation takes off, Kate, I can tell you this, I think, manages to get herself involved in the investigation on the UK end, and on the other end of that investigation are the Homeland Security, US Homeland Security, and I was able to create a character who I absolutely adored writing called Gabrielle Torres. She is a special agent in charge over there, so we've got very, very strong women on both sides of the Atlantic, and I think it's fair to say that they're a match for one another. So I really, really enjoyed. I know Gabrielle just arrived in my head, and yeah, I really liked her, and I liked the way she operated.
Wonderful. So another character for us to fall in love with Mary there, which is wonderful. Now, but creating a character like Gabrielle and bringing in, I mean, we said, this investigation, this case, this is of international proportions now. You take us out of the very familiar setting that that so many of us love and know of the Northeast. And
it's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of people really liked that. There were a couple of reviews where people said, "Oh, not this one, not for me," and that was, I think, because I had taken her out of the Northeast. A lot of the book does happen in the Northeast. It may well be that I've taken Kate out of her comfort zone. She hasn't got her team around her that she normally has, although there is contact on the phone. And eventually we do end up back in the Northeast. But much of the first part of the book certainly takes place around Heathrow and the South and the Met and the Casualty Bureau and what have you. And I make absolutely, I just don't think I need to apologise for that.
Not at all.
I wanted this book to be on a larger canvas because of the incident that we're talking about.
Quite.
It was bound to be, in one way, on a much, much larger canvas. So yeah, and the reviews have been amazing, I have to say.
Me personally, I absolutely adore the way she is out, as you say, on this much larger canvas.
And out of her comfort zone. She's out of water, and that's where I wanted her.
Yeah.
Because I thought, Kate, you know what? I'm going to put you there, and you're going to have to sink or swim.
Yeah.
And that's what I do with Kate all the time. I throw things at her just to see how she's going to handle them. Yeah. And she won't let go if she wants to do something. So there is a bit of a maverick in her, and I mean, there has to be in this book, because she's going against everything she's ever been taught.
But the thing is, Mari, what you also do, with there being that very personal aspect to this, is that emotional vulnerability
Mhm. Yes, I mean, people have said that. People have said this time we've seen Kate's more vulnerable side,
Mm.
and absolutely she is at the end of her tether. And of course, you know, faithful Hank is by her side all the way through this. Yeah, so there were parts of it that were quite difficult to write. I'm a crybaby anyway, you know that. But you know, there is a underneath her love. You know, there is a love story attached to this. This is a massive investigation. For those who haven't seen the series, Kate's backstory is just her backstory, but in this one, it becomes
Yeah.
part and parcel of the same thing, which you know I thought was a good idea, and it has worked.
Mm. Can I ask the research that you needed to do to bring in, before we even get to airline disappearance and crashes, right? But bringing in the FBI and US Homeland Security, was it a pleasure to delve into those, you know, those official bodies?
It was because I am partnered with an ex murder detective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to work as hard as some writers do to get that part right. So this part was pretty much down to me. I'm lucky that my next door neighbour um, is a pilot, so I could talk to him about, you know,
Mm-hmm.
stuff between the aircraft and the control tower and stuff like that. Um, and you know, the baggage handling, a lot of that was just kind of my head. You know, I have no idea what goes on. No what goes on in baggage handling. I mean, you know, I just imagined it. That's how I imagined it. I just imagined, you know, the little office that would overlook the main budget. You know, and I'm putting Kate in such a state there because she's actually hauling suitcases on and trying to listen to what's going on and stuff like that. I mean, in relation to the aircraft itself,
Mm-hmm.
obviously I refer to real
Mm-hmm.
cases,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm, by the way, very sensitive to the fact that unfortunately this week an aircraft has gone,
Mm-hmm.
you know, has
Yeah.
crashed in the sea, and I was due to be on talk radio on Badass Women last week, and basically rang the producer and said, "Are you aware that this has happened? I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we can sensitively
Yeah.
talk about this. It wouldn't be right." And so I cried off, and they have put that back. So we'll talk about it in a few weeks.
Uh-huh.
Likewise, some bloggers that were on the blog tour, you know, one of them got in contact with me, and I said, "Absolutely, don't post today."
Yeah.
And they didn't, and they will post possibly this
Mm-hmm.
week. But you have to be sensitive. But it was like almost like in the same situation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which was awful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
But I do think, Mary,
you
you
know,
know,
it's one of those things that people write
mm-hmm.
books, and then, you know, real life follows the fiction, if you like.
That's right. I totally agree. And also, I think, you know, it's sad to say these incidents are things that now form part of our modern existence.
Exactly. So when I actually got together, I had been saving for quite a while. I had been saving newspaper articles about air crashes that had happened, and reading those, you know, apart from it was very interesting, but very frightening. You know, and some of them went into great detail about, you know, how a plane descended from the sky and the fact that it, you know, it came down in like a big spiral going down. And obviously there were other aircraft that were never found, have
Yeah.
not been found.
Found. Yeah.
And then there was Lockerbie, which
Mm-hmm.
you know yourself that parts of the Lockerbie air disaster, parts of luggage were found in Northumberland.
Yeah.
That was just so sad, and so it was very interesting, but was also quite depressing. And I'm not the best flyer, I have to say. But the older I get, the less I like flying. I don't know why it is, but I prefer four wheels. I prefer two wheels, but then I prefer four wheels after that. And being 30,000 feet up in a tin tube doesn't
Yeah.
fill me. I mean, if I'm going on holiday, I will get on. Obviously, will get on a plane. I know people who won't. But the more I read about that, the more terrified it made me, I have to say. So I shan't think about this book the next time I get on a plane.
Exactly. I have to say it's one of my biggest fears. And so to pick up without a trace was a bit like, okay, come on, you can do this. And
I remember years ago, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but M.R. Hall had a book. I can't remember the title of it. It was all about an air crash. It was absolutely fantastically written. And I absolutely would, I've got the book somewhere. I know I've got it somewhere, but I absolutely wasn't going to look at that because I was terrified. It was so good. It was so good. But it made me just never want to fly again. I can't remember what it was called. I'm sure I'll remember it in a minute. But yes, it was that kind of thrillery thing to do with a plane.
And it is, and it really works. And I love as well how other things unfold. Within this, it's not just the investigation of a jet that's gone missing. There is more behind this, and I think it's again the way that I don't want to say that you fool us but you do. There's things that we don't expect that you bring out, and I love that. This is not straightforward, not at all.
Yeah, well, one of the things that surprised me when I was writing the book was that I wanted to go in a certain way, shall I put it that way, and I was thinking about a character that could get me there. And then I thought about a character from a previous book who could definitely get me there. And I was like, yes, I can do this. And it was just, I never planned that. I honestly didn't plan that.
Beautiful.
And I got to that point and I thought, oh my God, I've got this ready-made character from a different book. And he worked so well. He worked so well. And was just perfect. I couldn't have chosen anyone more perfect. So yeah, it was lovely to see him again as well.
Yeah,
to write with him as well.
Yeah, and again, what you say, like, who knew? Who knew that would pop up and be a perfect fit?
Yes, and what I've really tried hard to do, Jackie, is to give those readers who've not read the first 6 books the feeling that they knew these characters that were coming in, because that was really important. And it's a really fine line to give new readers a flavour of what's gone on without boring the readers that you've already got who know the series. And that's a very, very fine line. I try to work really hard at that. And if I've gone a bit too far, then I will edit it out. But which is why I kind of wrote this. Well, I did write this like a standalone. All of the books are self-contained. They all have their own story. And it's Kate's personal arc, personal life, you name it, and Hank's and everybody else's, that kind of go through the whole series.
Yeah.
But yes, I was always going to land here. What land might be the wrong word under the circumstance, but I was always going to write this book. It was never going to be a different book. And I'm actually now halfway through the next Kate Daniels, having already finished A Stone and Oliver, which will come out in July.
Oh, yes.
That is called The Deep. That comes out in July, and I can't wait for that one because I know there's a lot of people out there that like that series. I'm writing the next book, and I've got a title. It's called Her Last Request. But whether I keep that title or not, I'm not sure, because as you know, it's something that publishers, editors and writers talk about all the time. It's perfect for that book, but I'm teasing you now, aren't I?
You really are. You're very wicked. Come back to me to this book, the one that we've got
Okay.
on the table, before I get carried away. I wanted to ask about the way, if you are conscious when you write of the pace and rhythm that is found within the pages. It reminds me of music, you know, that they're...
Oh, I'm going to cry now.
Seriously, you know, and that feeling that when you pick up a Mary Hannah book, you know, there's something there that says this is your writing, and the way that you take us, you know, it really is sit in the seat, buckle up, and you know, and just hang on, because and it's, you know, or the rhythm of an engine, the twists and turns of a road. Are you conscious that you produce that?
I think I am. I think that there comes a point where you know you've got a voice that is different from anyone else's. As regards the rhythm, I think that you find your own rhythm as you go along. I mean, you know, I'm writing book 14 now, believe it or not. And it's just incredible where the time has gone. But I've got, you know, and I always say this, and I say this to every writer that's out there watching, you get better and better. You learn, but you know, you learn all the way through. And if you ever get to the point where you think you know it all, then you ought to give up, because nobody knows it all, and you just keep learning. You keep, you know, just polishing your text, and it helps. But when I write, I almost write it like a screenplay. I try and get the action and the dialogue and everything going, and then I edit as I go along. Some people go, get a dirty draft down, this, that and the other, then go back to the beginning and fill it all in. My brain doesn't work like that. My brain works with, do a great chapter, go back, read it over, put the bits in that you need to, you know, that if there's thought there that she's, you know, when I read it again, usually if I've got the action there and I've got the dialogue, but then there's the thought and the emotion that she's feeling when people are telling her things, or you know, or she's, you know, at the moment in the book that I'm writing now, she's just had a very sensitive conversation with the father of a murdered woman, and they are helping each other, and you know, I'm always conscious of how Kate deals with the bereaved, and I think, you know, a lot of that has come from being at home and, you know, having a detective come through the door, and you know they've had a bad day because they're like, ugh, you know, and that drains them and that drains her, and I know that it does. So you know, I've got experience of that, and you know, so yeah, I'm always conscious of that. But I think it is that screenwriting, that kind of visual feeling that I have when I write, that creates the, yes, you need the pace and the tension, and sometimes you need to sort of slow it all down so that the reader can, you know, grab their coffee and their biscuit and have a, you know, for the next exciting bit. Like, you know, you need to have that pace, and you know, But yes, this one is kind of pretty much full on all the way through.
Yeah, it
But
is.
emotionally as well as like investigative.
Yeah, that dual
Is that a word?
strand of,
Investigatively?
yeah,
Yes.
we'll work it. That's great. I love it. Yeah,
If it isn't, it is now.
it is now in the dictionary.
I'm a writer. I can make up words if I want.
Now, sadly, I am aware of the time,
It's okay.
which is never
I
on
can
our
speak to you
side.
for hours on end.
Likewise. But the last question that I'm going to ask is to do with the fact that this book comes with a whacking gorgeous endorsement in its Capital Crimes Crime Book of the Year. Yeah. So again, for anybody who's stumbled upon us and doesn't know what capital crime is, could you tell the viewers what is capital crime?
Capital Crime is the Capital's Crime Festival in London, obviously, run by David Headley and Adam Hamdy. It has been going, I went to the first one. The inaugural one was the year before last. This year, it didn't take place because of COVID. And I was in the garden. I knew I'd been shortlisted for the prize. Some fabulous writers alongside me. And I opened my phone. Mo was gardening away. I opened my phone and I went, oh my God, I've won. I was like, she said, won what? And I went, capital crime. And she said, really? And I went, don't make it sound like I didn't deserve it.
Excuse me.
No, we didn't have a domestic, but she was over the moon, and so was I. I honestly did not expect to win it. I would have been if they'd have announced it at the festival. You know, it's a shame that I wasn't there for them to announce it at the festival. I probably would have fallen on the floor. But it was such, you know, when you win crime novel of the year for any festival, it is an amazing achievement, and it's, you know, it's just I was just so honoured to get it.
I think
It just made my year, and this has been a shitty year. It
yeah.
had made my year, honestly. It's the one, you know, like, it's just the one thing that I hang on to that happened.
And for me, I think, you know, that to me, it's as much for Kate Daniels as well. It's like saying, you
Absolutely.
know, this.
Another one for Kate.
Yeah, that, you know, and don't get me wrong, you know that I love your other series, but this one is very special, you know, for very personal reasons. And I just think for that, she's back to come with that endorsement. You know, and again, you know, if you haven't had the joy of the series, read this one now, and then go back and read the back and find out what you know, what brings her to this moment. It's well worth it. Do it. Mary Hannah, it has been an utter joy to have this time together.
Brilliant to talk to you. I wish we were doing this in the pub or at the festival and
I know
all of that, but we will one day.
We will. And Mary, I really hope, you know, that we can gather once more. You know, Newcastle Noir will be there in the flesh, and we can keep celebrating good crime writing and the fellowship, you know, that is around that genre.
I'll tell you what I got today. I got a copy of Danny's Anthrax Island through the door. Yes, I can't wait to read it. I've watched him, you know, I did. He bought me as a mentor through the festival, through Theakson's festival, and I worked with him for a little while. And you know, it's such a joy to see someone as enthusiastic as him come on and get his book out there, and it's coming out soon. So if anybody's listening, look out for that one too.
So that's Danny Marshall, yeah.
Anthrax Island.
Anthrax Island.
I give him a little push because I know he'll be watching.
Yeah, and also he should prepare himself for coming for a consultation, I think. So,
Absolutely.
indeed,
Absolutely.
indeed. But until the next time we're able to meet, Mari, stay safe and see you soon. Yeah.
And you.
Okay. Bye, Mari.
Thanks so much.
Bye.